The Sui dynasty is going to finally, after 350 years of regional chaos, is going to restore centralized rule back to China. And the Sui dynasty shares a lot of similarities to the earlier Qin dynasty that came just before the Han dynasty. Both of these dynasties were short lived. Both of these dynasties could be brutal. They required a lot, especially from the lower classes, but they served an important role in that they brought back centralized rule to China. And so the Sui dynasty was founded by Yang Jian, and he's going to originally serve as a duke and overthrow a young emperor, a 7-year-old emperor, then goes on to kill 59 rivals and claim the mandate of heaven. And once he claimed this mandate of heaven, he built a huge military to help bring China under his control. And he's going to oversee a wide variety of large-scale public works. And that's one of the defining characteristics of the Sui dynasty, were these public works. But one of the most important of these public works was the Grand Canal. The Grand Canal was really the largest waterworks at the time, and it basically linked the Yangtze River in the south to the Honghe River in the north. And the importance of this is that a lot of the crops, especially rice crops, were grown in the south along the Yangtze, whereas most of the population was still in the north along the Honghe River, the Yellow River. And so it helped bring the food supplies from the south to the more populated north and helped kind of integrate those economies. Other public works, huge palaces, a new capital at Luoyang. They even at the new capital imported a forest so that the emperor would have a place to hunt, and imported thousands, tens of thousands of trees. And over time, the high taxes and the burden that this placed on the lower classes is going to take its toll. And we're going to see resentment and hostilities. We're also going to see some military reverses, especially in Korea. They'll fail on 3 separate attempts to try to take Korea. Rebellions break out across China. And the last of these Sui emperors is assassinated in 618, leading to an end of the Sui dynasty. And at this point, many feared that China would just fall back into the chaos that they had been in the previous 3 centuries. But ultimately, that's not going to happen. The Tang Dynasty is going to be founded by Li Yuan, or Gangzhou as he's known. He was an official under the Sui Dynasty, and he's going to seize control of the capital at Chang'an and declare a new dynasty, the Tang Dynasty. And the second of these Tang emperors, Tang Taizong, is going to continue this expansion. And he was a ruthless but also a very competent ruler, claimed to have killed over 1,000 men himself, overthrew his own father and killed his brothers and their sons so they couldn't challenge his claim to the throne. But despite that, under his reign, China enjoyed a lot of stability and prosperity. He's going to build a capital at Chang'an. It was said there were no bandits during his reign. Taxes were low. Taxes only amounted to about 2.5% of a person's income during this time. He's going to build an extensive network of transportation and communication systems with inns and postal stations all throughout the empire. They're also going to adopt the equal field system. And land distribution had always been a major problem in China. Too much of the land was tied up in the hands of the upper aristocracy. And so the idea behind the equal field system was to redistribute part of this land to the other social classes. And so the upper aristocracy, whenever a upper aristocrat died, their families could keep 1/5 of that land in the family, but the rest was supposed to be redistributed. They're also going to bring back the Confucian examination system. And if you remember, the Confucian examination system was a series of exams that potential government bureaucrats would have to take and pass in order to serve in the government. And it was based on merit, at least in theory. So it was open to everybody, but upper classes still had advantages when it came to taking these exams. Social class still played a role. Also, upper classes could devote more time to prepare for the exams, and they could hire better tutors to prepare for the exams. But despite that, it was open to everybody. These exams were based entirely on Confucian ideals and made up mostly of essays, what they called these eight-legged essays. And we'll talk more about the exam system with the Song Dynasty. The Tang Dynasty was also a very large dynasty, a period of rapid expansion. And they're going to force tribute from Korea. They're going to push into northern Vietnam. They're also going to expand westward and continued to expand westward into Central Asia until they're stopped at the Battle of Talas River by the Abbasid Caliphate. So it's during the Tang Dynasty that we also get one of our fairly rare female empresses, the Empress Wu. She had been a consort to the emperor. She's going to kill her own daughter, but frames the existing empress and then convinces the emperor to make her his new empress, which he does. 4 years later or so, the emperor suffers a stroke, and the Empress Wu is going to rule in his place. She later even poisons her own son in order to keep power. But she's one of the rare examples that we have in Chinese history of these female rulers. She was also a strong supporter of Buddhism, and it's really after her reign that we start to see a more steep decline of Buddhism in China. Reasons for the Tang Dynasty's decline. It always starts with poor leadership. And as your leaders become more isolated from the public, that leads to outside problems. And so poor leadership kind of started this decline. Rebellions break out. A group of Turks called the Uyghurs come in, and they're paid to restore order. And they do. They come in and they restore order for the Tang Dynasty, but they also wouldn't leave until China agreed to pay them annual tribute payments and allow them to sack the capital at Chang'an. The equal field system also begins to deteriorate, and more land once again becomes tied up in the hands of the upper classes. And so peasant rebellions spread, regional warlords and military leaders break away and build up their own power bases, and the last of the Tang emperors is going to step down from the throne in 907 CE.